Yo, what's up?
The sky. What is an hour quick?
Jen?
Why are you smiling?
Yes, talking to you, bro.
Why? What is an hour to you? What does an hour mean to you? How long is an hour?
You gonna put me on blast on live?
Yes,
It's not a good idea to do that.
but then you need to respect people's time.
Okay, thank you for telling me that.
It's a pleasure. You're welcome.
I like that. I like that you have a bit of sauce within you. You normally just let people walk all over you, so I'm glad for that.
I
Yeah,
cannot believe you said that like on live. But good.
told you, don't put me on blast. I'm always ready. Hey, the boy.
It is on
Hey, what's up? You guys gonna get on the serious convo or what? You gonna play games?
Yeah, I will. I will. I
Alright,
can.
alright.
I can speak for them.
Alright, don't make a noise. I'm gonna kick you off if you make a noise.
Hey, now if that happens, I'll go off.
Alright,
If they start
alright,
making too much noise.
alright, boy. Where are you? Are you at Dylan's?
1 second. Sorry.
Excuse my boy. Is that a mug or a
What?
pot?
it's a pot.
Ah, okay.
And it's even finished because yeah.
How excited! You probably went through all your journals, your whole social sciences journals and social work journals to try to find out what's going on. Let me prepare for this, and went to look up the latest Cochrane reviews and MedMet.
Oh yeah.
For
Listen,
your
you don't
information,
have to, but thank you.
absolutely not.
Hey, bless the internet
Absolutely
today.
not the case.
The connection's good today.
Aye, yeah. Okay, so yesterday, well, I first wanted to start off by saying that yesterday was the one place where we reached where it's rare to get there because online or even in person, it's very difficult to in any conversation, especially when it's this sensitive. It's very hard to reach a consensus where you actually are at least on the same page or on the same chapter at least. More often than not, you see things one way, I see things one way, and then I'm too stubborn to change, you're too stubborn to change, and because the conversation is too sensitive, it's you're not going to just obviously budge, and then I'm not obviously just going to budge. Um, and then what tends to happen is then
Mm.
we kind of just spiral out of control together, and then we resort to name calling, and you resort to not
Being
listening.
personal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you see it often, right? And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why these certain things like this they just spiral out of control because you then when it happens once, you then tend to treat the next conversation like the last one. So if I have a fight with you and we're speaking about this, all you need is certain words from someone else that sound like mine for you to go, here we go again. There's another apologist, and then boom, you go straight into labeling and then categorizing, and you don't listen. So yeah, yesterday was one of the few times where we were able to wrestle not only with each other but wrestle within ourselves as well. Because I mean, obviously, knowing me, I'm quite a robust person, and you're not as robust, and you're quite sensitive type. But even with that, then you had to control. I had to control the way I spoke because I didn't obviously want to make the narrative seem like I'm pushing you down, and at the same time, you had to control what you said because you didn't also want to feel like you were just there to get, listen, there to get, there to listen, right? So you kind of had to come out of your
Mm.
shell and battle yourself, and I had to come out of my shell and kind of listen a bit more. So I remember yesterday when we were talking, there's a point where you were telling me about like how when the systems go wrong, what should we do, right? And that was crucial because I think that's where the conversations should be starting at, right? As to, okay, well, the systems are going wrong. Okay, why do we say that? How do we determine that?
Mm.
And then once we know the how, the why, the when, and the who, and the what, then we can say, okay, well, then we can start to formulate certain things based on that, right? But if we
Mm.
just say that it's wrong, then it's like, well, I don't think it's wrong. You think it's wrong. So you're going to change something. I think that whatever you're going to change might actually make the situation worse. And then you're thinking whatever I
Mm.
don't want to change and keep the same, I'm making the situation worse. And then we just speak past each
Mm.
other, right? So yeah, and I mean, look, things like this as well is it's kind of like it's very statistical and it's also very much border, well, not even border morality. It's very much about morals, right? Because it's about caring, right? So like you can't really distinguish the statistics from your moral nature. Like for me, I might say, for instance, well, if 10 people died, it's not like a million died. And then you might say, look, if one person died, that's enough, right? And then that might change your viewpoint, regardless of the statistic, and that might change your morality as well, or the way that you think. So it's important to understand then where I'm coming from and where you're coming from and where we actually want to go together. Yeah. So I think with this whole attraction violence talk, it's like, well, first of all, where I'm coming from, it's like you don't want anyone to die. Dying's a natural process, right? And as for my side, it's like, well, I want the numbers to be down, of course, but for everyone, right? And then you want the numbers to be down too, right? For females, let's say, right? But then it's like, well, how do we then do both simultaneously? Because if you do the one, it seems as though you're not doing the other. But in essence, you
Mm.
probably are doing the same. So, yeah, I'll give you the board to speak.
I don't have much to say now. I think we got to a point where we need to, or society need to move to getting to the solutions because we know what the problem is or the challenges in the systems that are put in place and are supposedly um, you know, supposed to fight this pandemic. However, there's so many things that are just not working. And how do we address that? And also, I made the point of just because I am the person experiencing the failure of whatever is put in place, it doesn't mean that I will necessarily have the solution of what needs to be done. And also keeping in mind that that one person or that small group of people might just be like a drop in the ocean. So we need to move to a place where we can have the conversations of what needs to change. And what I
How do you think
emphasized
that can be
was
done?
especially, sorry?
How do you think that can be done? What is, if you have an idea or a solution for that, what is it? Or anything close to it?
I think,
What
we
was the question?
as South Africans,
What?
repeat the question. Who was supposed to repeat the question?
Yeah.
You guys are lagging.
Oh no. Are we going back to that place again? Are you actually lagging?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I can hear you clearly. What did you say, Wish?
Hold on. No, I'm lagging. No, something's wrong with that. No, so she's talking about how changes can be made. No, I was just asking her how any changes can be made and if she has an idea or like if she, obviously if there's a problem, how can I phrase this right? Um, how can I phrase this? Don't let me stop you, but I can get back to it. You guys can continue.
Okay. I think the starting point will be to actually listen and acknowledge. And I said this last night as well. Until we acknowledge that the things that are put in place are not working, it's the same for any other type of healing, if you may. There's no way you're going to heal if you are in denial of something is actually wrong. So that would be the first point, is to accept and to acknowledge that, you know what, some of the things we've put in place, they're just not working. And again, regardless of really looking into 50% or 40% of the people are saying successful and the rest are saying it's not, because one, as I said as well, is way too many. So I would think that from that point, conversations, dialogues, forums, and whatever that needs to be, or that can be at least create an opportunity where people, because the thing in South Africa, we like speaking. We can talk for days. And we are also, I think, very good to come up with policies and mandates and all of that. But the problem is the implementing part of it. We have a great of many things, but they're just not working because somewhere the things are just not, protocol is not being followed, processes are not being followed, and no one is keeping the people who are supposed to implement these things accountable. And then it just happened that, okay, that person could get away, or and see there's no consequence, so why can't I as well? And taking the example of the protection orders again, the police, they don't do anything about it. You can go and say this person breached this thing. They will rather victimize you and make as if you are the person who's in the wrong. And then that goes with a lot of other things. You can go into corruption and bribery and all of that goes in hand with that. But that is a problem because now, because of their lack of accountability and no consequences for their actions, that results in things just getting worse. Because now society is at a place where they don't even trust the people who are supposed to protect communities, because this person is a friend of my husband, or I know this person is a friend of my partner, and I'm not comfortable to go there. Do you understand? So that is one of the things, that the things that are put in place are probably supposed to work out well. They are there for a reason. But no one is making sure that they are implemented the correct way and the protocols are followed. And then that just results into it not working, it being a big failure. That is how I view it.
What do you say, Wish?
I feel like her idea comes from some sort of experience, like personal experience, rather than a social experience. So there must be a story behind where your idea comes from. I'm curious to what it is.
I'm a social worker.
So you must have had so is that it? So you must have had so many experiences, multiple, too many to name. Damn.
Yes, absolutely,
So that's
absolutely, and
that's one of
Is
the
it?
and
Don't
interesting
we
things,
you?
right?
having to take.
Sorry.
That's
Uh,
one of the interesting things as to like why it's so interesting talking to you because as the nature of your job, you're always going to only speak to people with problems, right? Just like the nature
Yeah.
of my job. I'm only going to speak to people with pain, right? No one comes to me if
mm,
they're fine, right? So therefore, what
mm,
happens is then your own perception, then like your own
It's the
perception and
negative.
your reality is actually not what the world is, right? So
mm,
I might then say,
mm,
look, man, people are in so much pain, and it's like, yeah, if I go to work, they are, but if I take leave for like 30
mm,
days, I don't find anyone in pain because I'm not at work, right?
mm,
So
mm,
in a situation like yours again, it's like you're never gonna. It's like a call center agent. Like no one calls a call center if they're happy or working at a bank. No one's gonna call you and say, hey, thank you for depositing my check, right? So
yeah.
with a social worker, it's kind of also part of the problem that you then have is that then your perceptions
Mm,
every single day become somewhat someone that's like that's always receiving negative energy or that's always receiving negative things, and which is why that we were saying yesterday, like you always see females the ones that complain, and it's like, yeah, you only see people that complain firstly, right? Because no one would come to you if they weren't complaining, and it just so happens that then those people are either going to be male or female, right? It could be males, it could be
mm,
females, it could be the demographic that you're in, it could be whatever type of social work that you're in, that you only see those type of people. So then it doesn't mean that that's the
yeah.
way that life is actually is for everyone else. Yeah, well, which then
Mm,
begs the question of, well, then if that's the way that you see it, and then you say, well, this is a problem, it's like, well, it's a problem according to
mm,
who, right? And is
mm,
it a big enough problem to address? Because everything is going to be a problem. We can't address everything,
mm,
right?
mm,
So now when we then address this little problem, it's like, well, then what about the other thousand problems? And how is addressing this
mm,
problem going to fix the other thousand problems? What if we address this problem, it actually makes the other
mm,
thousand worse? But because you're so concerned about this one problem, you don't see the other thousand. And then once you fix this one, it actually then decapitulates everything else. Look, I don't even know if that's a word, but anyway.
mm.
So, so you then get to a point where your job or your whatever you do throughout the day shapes the way that you see life, which actually might not be what life actually is. And look, you spend like 8 hours at work, let's say on a minimum, right? And you sleep for eight
But
hours.
what if, like, obviously it's impossible, for it to be the case, but imagine a society without social workers, because Tina, we are employed to fix things, to solve other people's problems. You
Yeah,
have to
well,
take on different cases, different scenarios, different everything. It doesn't mean that every lady who's going to walk through our office doors is going to come because of gender-based violence. You understand? So even though, yes, we
let's
work
not
with
even use
problems,
that term. Let's not even use
that's
that
the
term.
core of our business.
Let's not use that term.
However,
Let's not use that term.
Yeah. My face
relax,
went sour as you said
relax,
that. It's just violence. There is no
It's
gender-based
fine.
violence. It's just
violence.
violence.
And the funny
Just
thing is
Yeah,
violence.
again, it's exactly what you're saying
for
as
you
well, right?
people say I'm not violence.
Yeah, well, look, it's
But
exactly what you're saying now as
the
well.
point that I'm trying to, I totally get what you say, and I understand what you're saying. But I wouldn't want us to also like ignore the fact that we live in a society that is filled with overwhelming social ills.
Yes.
And it is always a case of the one thing leads to another. And
Yes.
somewhere, people need voices, people need people to, other people, or people at least to advocate for them,
Yeah.
to be the voice for the voiceless, to fight these battles, to be able and challenge systems. That is part of our work. Just because a guy who has been either victimized at a police station when he tried to open a case, and he's going to come through our office to complain about it. I am not allowed to say, you know what, now go deal with it, because I'm an advocate for social justice. So I need to find what happened and how can that problem be solved. That is what I am being paid for. That is my job, to have these conversations, to have the forums, to have the dialogues, and see, as a community, as a society, with everyone doing different things, how can we together fight these ills that are overwhelming in our communities. That is what it's about. You understand? So yes, I totally agree that social work is now in my DNA. I think like a social worker. I see things as a social worker. And unfortunately, I cannot, that's not something that I can take away, because that's what I do. Like, it's in me. And obviously, it's going to shape my perspective on things. It's going to shape my opinions, but it doesn't mean that my individuality is being taken away just because I'm a social worker, because I have my own personal experiences that might be total different from the people that I am working with. In my capacity as a social worker and in my individuality as well. I have people in my life, I have friends, I have family. Those people might also have different experiences that they are sharing with me. So, it's all of these things. And as I said last night as well, at the end of the day, everything you are exposed to, directly and indirectly, they shape who you are. They shape your thinking, they shape your perspective, they shape your opinions and how you view things. It is just one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, that's all of that stuff that you mentioned. Again, it's like it's a constant challenge. That's why I was saying to you even when we started the call that like it's not just a conversation between me and you. It's also a conversation between me and you and you. Because it's like you. It's if
Yeah.
you have some perspective, and you think a certain way. By the time you even go and study, you already have that perspective. So whatever you gain in input wise, you want to then gain it to a point where it's going to at least match up to what you believe. Otherwise, you wouldn't have chose what you wanted to choose, right? Like you wouldn't have been a social worker if you didn't care about social norms, right? Or any
Mm,
social justice. But then what happens is then if
mm,
you get into that situation and then you get into that situation with a certain way of thinking, you get then the tag of say, okay, cool, now you're a social worker. Now all of a sudden you become that social worker that thinks that way, right? And now you have power that's right next to you. And now you can actually influence social justices the way that you see fit, right? And it might not be the way that the social work in its context sees fit. And then you start writing
mm,
reports and start writing all these, what do you call it, journals and things that support the way that you used to think, right? And you never, let's say,
mm,
to the point where you don't engage in conversations like this, right? You don't engage in listening to the
mm,
other people. And then all you write about is, oh, well, violence against children because you're sensitive to children, right? And you don't ever
mm,
write about the fact that, well, men are being violated or women are being violated, let's say, right? And then all of whatever you write is whatever you're interested in, right? And as you should,
mm,
right? But then it takes it's like a constant battle of, well, is it important or is it not? And then you will say, well, it's important to me. And then everyone else will say, okay, cool, we understand that, but is it important in terms of nature? And then you will then change,
mm,
say, policies just from having that. You can then go from working in a private sector to then working as a chairman or having your own, what do you call it, sector and all that, practice, let's say. then all of a sudden, you're then shaping the way other people are thinking about those things. And then there's a whole bunch of other people that don't think about it that way, but then you don't even allow them in because you've always thought that way. And that's also like one of the biggest things or the biggest issues that people have when they get into certain places or jobs of power, because at the end of the day, it is a job. So regardless of how you think or not, you kind of have to do the job. And if you don't like it, then you don't get paid for it, you don't eat, and you die, right? So it's like most people just go, okay, well, I only have a certain threshold of the truth that I'm going to say, right? Because if I don't say that truth, right, and I say, if I do say the truth and it becomes too much, I might then get killed off. So then I'm not going to be dancing around the edges too much. And it's like the more responsibility you get, the less you go away from your own thoughts and you start to embody everyone else's thoughts, which is probably what happens in politics, right? It's like you might start off as, oh, I want to advocate for everyone in the world, right? And then they go, okay, cool, we like your policies, and you get to the higher parts of the world, and then all of a sudden you now have to advocate for old people, for disabled people, for children, for women, for guys that are incarcerated, for guys that are falsely accused of rape, for women that are being violated against. And then you go, ooh, now my viewpoint might be a bit different to what these things are. So now you have kind of shaped who you are based on what your job is. You see, and then you kind of walk the line because it's like, well, if I become too extremist, it becomes a problem. If I become too extremist, there becomes the problem. And then the job then becomes first, and you become secondary to that. So that's why then, like I said, that the reason why I enjoy having conversations with people like this is because we're the ones that actually have all that power. You know, we're the ones thinking, okay, we're going to look up to the next people or my boss to change things. Like that guy has like so many other things. The last thing he wants to do is change stuff. Whereas the best opportunity to change stuff now is like, well, let's have a conversation. And then you rip me for it, cool. Now I'm better off tomorrow. But if you don't rip me for it, then I think the way I think all the time. And now I get power as I get higher and higher. And then I don't ever listen to you. And then I go up there and I make a fool out of myself. And I go, no, we should never listen to women ever. And men are always right. Because of one time that I was falsely accused of something. And I feel that that's the way that men are always felt. And then I forget that I have a sister, I have a mother, I have an aunt. And then they're going to get then the brunt of whatever I think. Right? So at the end of the day, it's like, well, actually, what do I want? Do I want everyone to be good? Or do I just want a particular person? And how will I find out how that happened? And that only happens through difficult dialogue. Like you're supposed to, like, you know, when you leave conversations at times, you're supposed to be shaken. You know, you're supposed to be rattled. You're supposed to be crying. Because it's like, it needs to take something from you. Because if it doesn't, then it wasn't worth it. And then tomorrow you wake up, you go, you know what, you had a point there. There are certain times where I know that females are violated and they go to the police station and the cops just go, fuck that, get away from here. And that's harsh, right? And there needs to be a voice for that. And then you wake up and you go, you know what, actually there are times where guys and wherever it is, you know, they sleep with a woman and then they wake up tomorrow and the woman says, I didn't like that. And then they go, boom, scream rape. And you're like, shit, this guy went for 20 years for something that he didn't do. And now that clicks something in you too. And then we're on the same page in terms of we're actually now trying to fight for something as close as possible to equality of opportunity or whatever we're trying to fight against, but not fighting separately. Which is why I say, like, it irks me with these talks of the one narrative says, no, this is the way that things go because this is the way that I want to believe it. And they influence the next generation that can't think for themselves. And then they look up to us and they go, well, come on, Lungelo can't be lying to me. You know, he's always telling some stuff of value. And then they follow you and then they learn everything you're saying and then they don't even question anything. Then they're just blinded. And then one day I rock up and say, look, you know what I thought 2 years ago? Actually, that's not true anymore. I'm lying. And now they're just left in the abyss.
You know what? On that point, whose responsibility is it to raise a generation that can think for themselves? Lungelo Vakabani, whose responsibility is that? on who should it rest to raise a generation that can actually critically think, that can actually think out of the box, who are able to challenge, because that is the thing. It's challenging. You can't just accept everything just because media is saying that, just because politician is saying that, just because it's written somewhere in some legislation, it is like that. Whose responsibility is that? What do you guys think? Wish you've been quiet.
Question.
I'm taking in. I'm taking in. I actually had a question earlier, and I wanted to ask: do you enjoy your work? This is going a bit off topic, but do you enjoy your work?
Oh, you know what? What a question.
I, yeah, and I don't want to stop
You want
anyone.
to
And I
ask
was
tough
like,
questions?
"You enjoy your work?" Yeah, I was like, as the top of my head, do you enjoy your work? It's like,
Why?
yeah.
Why are you asking that?
Because obviously being a social worker, and obviously you probably started off being a social worker thinking, okay, I'm gonna try and help as many people as I can, or people who are willing to actually make a change in their life, and go, okay, there's something that needs to be changed, and they came to you looking for help. So that was probably your idea. But how long have you been a social worker, if you don't mind me asking?
It's been 6 years.
6 years. So in that 6 years, what changed from when you started? At what point, and what changed?
Ah, guys, why is this about me? You're putting me on the spot here.
Is I just is I don't think I've met a social worker before or even spoken to one. So
Is it?
yeah,
I think yes. Initially, I thought that as a social worker, I just have this magic wand where I can just change people's lives, and I can make life way easier for them and comfortable and take all their burdens and stuff like that. But then reality hit. When did reality actually hit? I think prior to what I'm doing now, I was working at a high school and I was doing therapy there.
okay,
And then I realized that a life happens, each happens all the time. And unfortunately, it doesn't choose who, what, where, how, when. And, we are all made differently. And opportunities are not the same, our backgrounds are not the same, our values and all of that. But it's just that when life is so harsh, ne, and you just wish that you could do one thing or say one thing to change the circumstances of the person. So I think for me, in my head, I've had this. I was living in this bubble of, you know what, it's gonna be so easy. You're gonna be a social worker. You're gonna do things for people, and
exactly. You
that's not
probably
how it
thought,
works.
yeah, you probably thought, oh,
Sometimes
I'm a
I
good
cannot.
person.
I can't change things for people. I can't change the lives. I can't change the circumstances. I cannot do that. And that is the reality of it. And that the first time when I realized that, I felt like a big failure. But then I had to understand that I am no God. I am a human being. And we all have choices. And some people, unfortunately, when life throws lemons in them, they don't make lemonade of it. I don't know what they
From the
do.
reality of life for what it is.
Yes. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that, you know what? You have the responsibility to decide in which way your life is going to be. But what? It's very hard. It's hard to make someone else see what you're seeing sometimes, because I can have a vision for your life. I could be working with a girl who has been sexually abused and she feels like her life is over and she's not worthy.
Mhm. Okay.
I can equip her with the skills and the knowledge and the resources, but that is all I can do. I can't change her life. And if she is not going to tap into believing that I have the responsibility to decide the way forward of my life, then it's tickets.
So at what
I
point
can't change that.
at what point did your personal experiences and your work experience merge? Because that will happen over time. You probably start those were two separate lives when you started, and then as it went and you saw the reality of your work, it'll merge with
Mm.
the reality of your life, and then
Yeah.
you start thinking, oh, okay, and then that'll change your perspective on things and how you see things, how you speak to people, what you believe in, and then you'll be years in, and then you'll think back like, yeah, I didn't think I could think this way ever. So at what point did you go, oh, not now? I'm a completely different person because of my work.
That's a rebirth,
You know,
yeah?
actually,
Sorry?
there is absolutely no social worker that I ever met in my life
Mhm.
has just chosen the career or the profession just because. There's always
You can,
something in the
because
childhood or what, and you're like, oh, I want to be someone, or I want to be the person that was never there for me. So it always stems from something. For someone else, it could be minor. For someone else, it could be big.
yeah.
It's different for each person.
That's why I always say
But
there's more people in the medical field that have mental
relax,
issues than people that are not
relax.
there.
I need you to relax. I need you to just calm down. I do not. I honestly don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but you need to learn how to distinguish being a social worker and your personal life, because it's the same like parenthood. If when are you going to raise your child with a notion of, you know what, I want to give my child everything that I've never had, that notion is wrong from the get-go, because your needs might not be the same needs of that child, and the society that the
Yeah,
child is
I do
growing
agree
up
with
in now is different from
100%.
yours. So you need to be wary of that and knowing that now I'm not trying to fix a patient's life of 20 odd years ago. When she was a child, she was sexually abused. So now
Yeah.
every victim that I'm going to work with, I'm going to try to fight justice because the justice system saves me. So now I'm going to do everything to, it's wrong. That's where you
That
get
I
it
do.
wrong,
I feel
because
like
that
if parents,
person is unique. That person and that situation, yes, there are similarities, you can relate and all
yeah,
of that, but you need to treat that case as a total unique and individual case. You understand? So for me, I had to learn that. I had to
I feel
learn
like
to literally like
if
put
parents do
things in
that,
place to have the mental note of, okay, now I'm in my capacity as a social worker. Now I'm not. And if a case is really hitting home, I'm not going to work on it, because I can't project my feelings and my emotions and my experiences on that poor person's. That is not fair.
but do you not think that'll give you a sense of like, a second chance, or you can work with it differently then? Because obviously if you've gone through something personal and then you in the future you come through a case where it's similar to your story, obviously it's not the same, but you still have some idea of it. You'll be closer to it to understand how delicate it is and to deal with it in such a manner that you will possibly be able to make a change.
Yeah.
Because the
The
more
thing
you
is,
understand,
you need
because
to
the more you
be.
understand about something, and the more
Mhm.
you feel what they or whoever is feeling, then you can understand it for what it is rather than it coming from a perspective of, oh, it's my job. I'm gonna give
Mm.
them a general viewpoint and so on. But if it's close to you, then you know, okay, yes, it's very heavy, and you can be able to change someone's life completely with how
Yeah.
you know move on with it.
I think it's the contrary to that actually. Like the more you understand something and the more you get into it, the more you realize how much you don't understand about it, which then drives you into actually trying not to put too many of your hands into it. Because it's like again what you were saying earlier about like you went into social work and you were like, oh well, I have social, uh, thoughts, and I have social things that have happened to me and people around me, and therefore I feel as though I can change the world. And you get into it, and then you realize, oh shit, there's actually so many webs and so many connection points and so many other things. And now you know more than you knew before you got into it. But now that you know more, you realize how much more you don't know. Then you go, ooh, you know what? I think this is a pretty much of a too much of a complicated web for me to try to even advance it. So all I can do is try to understand it and then kind of let it go to a point whereby it kind of will then either fix itself, or the people that want to fix it can kind of fix it. Because again, it's like you don't really know what you don't know until you get into it. All of us have a solution on how to change world problems. We can think about it. Oh, well, let's just put every guy in jail. And as soon as that happens, we'll then believe all the women. And then it's like, okay, cool, try to do that. Try to do that if it's your brother. Try to do that if your uncle. And you go, oh, wait, that's a complicated web, because if he has a family, and if he has a family, how's his autistic child going to grow up? And how's his other 10 kids going to grow up? And how's that going to work for my family? And there's a grandmother that needs to be taken care of, and she's sick. And then the other girl also has something that, and then you go, shit. Well, perhaps what I thought I knew so much more, I don't know so much more about it. And to then try to then mess with something so delicately, so easily, is actually going to be foolish of you. And then kind of just say, no, you know what? It's easier to just complain, or it's easier to just think of solutions on the fly than actually try to go and do it. Like all of us have a way as to how to fix the energy structure, or ESCOM, or make a world a better place. So it's like, okay, cool, you know how to do it? Yeah, I'm going to halve poverty and I'm going to give everyone money. Because when people have money, then all of a sudden things are going to be great. It's like, okay, cool. Can we make you the president tomorrow? And then you go, oh, wait. Because then as soon as you think about being the president tomorrow, or think of you actually now in the position to do or to implement the situation that you thought about, then you actually have to embody that. You actually have to be that person. And then you remind yourself, oh shit, actually, there's like a million different personalities. There's a million different people. There's people that need to take leave. There's people that don't want to do the work. There's people that don't want to do things. And then you have to admit to yourself that actually, do I think I'm the only person that has thought about these solutions? Because if I am, then like, I must be a genius. But I know I'm not a genius. Because like, even the geniuses that I think are geniuses haven't solved this problem. So it's more complicated than it actually is. So then when you ask the question like, okay, well, do you want to then just solve the world's problems? You actually then realize, I don't know what I do, right? Which is the problem with complaining, is that it's easier to just complain when you're not in those shoes, because then you're not going to be asked to solve the issue. Because when you're asked to do it, you'll bring up the solutions, and then all of a sudden when you said, okay, well then let's do it, implement it, then you go, where will I start? And it's like, exactly. How do you start something that's so interconnected that you don't even understand it? So yeah, that's a long form answer to the question that Wish asked about. How do
Yeah,
you
but I think it's a skill that you learn with time to be able, because the line is very fine, and it's very good and well to be able to relate, sometimes with people, when you try to help them in whatever capacity, um, because of your experiences, and obviously then with that you would have some knowledge, or maybe I should, I can call this person, or I can tap into this resource, or whatever the case might be. But the line is so fine to not let your personal experiences overshadow your professionalism. And
Yeah,
we don't get it right every day because we are human beings. And personally, now I'm an emotional thinker. I think with my emotions. And I think it's the one thing that my supervisor I'm always on the red carpet about that. That I sometimes really logic, it would just disappear. I would think with my feelings and my emotions that, oh, it's not fair. They don't deserve that, you know. But then, sometimes you really just need to look at reality and what it is. For me, if there is a child who has been physically abused by their father, the first thing I want to do is remove that child. That is what my emotions tell me, because what a injustice and a trauma. But now I can't do that. I need to go and assess what happened, what was the reason. And you really learn that, oh, okay, no, it's not actually what I thought it is. So
yeah,
now I must unlearn and relearn new things. And
yeah,
it's the whole time that's what's happening. You need to unlearn and relearn and unlearn and relearn. And it's exhausting sometimes. It really is, because you have this thinking in your head, Bana, it's wrong. It's not supposed to be like this. But then the reality out there of how life is sometimes totally different from the idea that you have, whether it's based on your experiences, personal experiences, or what you've been exposed to earlier, previously. So you need to be aware of those things, and it's fine to say, you know what, I was actually wrong. I was wrong because we get those cases. You would now I can go open a case if Umdana was abused in whatever way, and the mother doesn't want to open. I can, because I'm a social worker. But now then you would think of, he's a breadwinner, you know, they are renting, and if he's not going to pay rent, these people are going to end up on the street, which is going to make things worse, because now I have to find place for a mother and 4 children. They must attend school, so it's not just it's not injustice and remove and fight. Sometimes you need to come down and look at it in a different way, and what is the reality of what's happening here, and how can we solve this thing in a different manner to what my feelings or my emotions are
So
telling me at the time.
your job requires you to be a realist.
It forces me, because you can make mistakes.
But
You can
so
really like, with how things are, Amandana can lie. A child can lie and say, this educator, my uncle, my father did that. And if not, the first thing I'm going to do, open a case and they go to prison. I might be really, if I'm not careful and looking at things in a different lens, I might really mess up not just one person's life. And you
multiple.
need to be conscious and aware of that the entire time.
yeah. That goes back to the question that you asked earlier about who's responsible for 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 the generation that's growing up. And the answer to that is everyone, especially the
Exactly.
people that make those decisions like that, right? Because again, like I said to you, is that as soon as you are in the position whereby you have a certain power or privilege more than someone else, you can act on impulse just like that. And it could be justified based on the way that you came through the whole system. That okay, well, I was bullied and I saw this and I saw that and I was sexually assaulted and I was touched inappropriately. So therefore, if any person comes to me and tells me that, that's it. That's wraps for you because everyone's going to go to jail. And then it's like, cool, you think you're doing the right thing? Good luck with that. And and you get higher and higher and you try to change the system and you create things like GBV that make no sense. And then you have 1,000
Hashtag,
people.
hashtag I believe you.
Okay? Yeah, yeah. Hashtag I
Hashtag
believe
I
you. Yeah.
believe you.
Hashtag me too. Hashtag I believe you because that's just the narrative that we're going to go about. We're not going to actually sit and think about these things and how it impacts other people. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, it's like, wait, why is actually the crime rate going higher and higher? And it's like, well, maybe because the people that you're trying to fight against have no other voice other than to be physically violent. So whatever you're doing and trying to corner them into a corner, right? They're actually only responding the only way that they can. So it's like, well, you're not going to give me a voice, well, then I might as well do something about it. Perhaps that's the reason, right? And then every time, oh, you see is, oh, wow, just another person that's done something heinous. And it's like, well, keep pushing, and you see how far people will go. It's the same with you, right? Like, no matter how soft or how less aggressive you are, you also have a certain threshold, right? Certain people can push your buttons, and it's easy to react emotionally. But in the sense that's like, well, when you have power, it's like your emotional reaction will actually have a huge impact. It's not just, well, I'm just going to write a little status on Facebook and then that's it, and then the person has no repercussions. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually going out there and I'm typing this person's name down on a system because I feel like I've been wrong, then my child has been wrong, and the way that my situation is, I've been wrong, then all of that. Now everyone that's put in a similar situation to me needs to do the right thing because I'm the savior in life. And then boom, you change change it for the worse. And then you don't even know that until it's done. And then you go, well, what is the problem with all these things? And it's like, it's you. You're the problem. And the only way you're able to understand that is if you listen to other people that think different.
But you need to be open to that. You need to have, I think it's one of the words that are just being thrown around, but you need to be open-minded. And you need to take in and actually listen and process what is being said without already preparing in your mind that I'm ready to answer, I'm ready to be on the defense, I'm ready to prove a point, I'm ready to show that my opinion is right, or whatever. You need to take in and make the effort to see where is the other person coming from.
Yes. It's a constant skill that you always have to be working on, and certain people are obviously better at it than others, and certain people are amazing at it. And it's a constant. It's like, again, like I said to you yesterday, it's like when we first had the topic, it has to be robust. Like it's not like we're talking about what we're doing over the weekend and no one cares about it. It's like it's something that's sensitive. So the definition of it, even being sensitive, is that it's going to be tricky to navigate. But then it's like, well, we can either leave it and not talk about it. And then it's like, well, then what happens tomorrow? Do you think it's going to be less sensitive? No, probably more. So it's like, okay, well, then we have to deal with it. And then it's going to be tricky. And you fight and you fight and you fight and you tug and tussle. And then you get to a point and you go, okay, well, yeah, okay. It might not even take after this call. It might take a year or 2 years when you go, yeah, actually, that was a good point. But then if you never had that talk, you were never going to think of that. If you weren't open enough to even openly adjust to that. And a lot of people only open when it's too late, right? Because it's like, it's a small example. It's like certain people just don't have that time frame, right? You don't have a time frame to be thinking the way that you think for 10 years. Because like a lot of things can happen in that time. You need to get married. You need to be with someone. You need someone to take care of you, for instance. So now if you're going to be a person that's always thinking, I'm the victim, and then you go, why are guys always leaving? Why are females always leaving me? Why am I always just being left alone? Why am I not with someone? Are these people crazy? Like, what? And then it's like, well, you don't have time. And then by the time you realize it after 40, 50, now you have to be in a different category with different people. Now, the people that you want to be with are not there anymore because they're like, no, thanks. It's a bit too late to change now. And then you have to go back into the dating pool or whatever pool that you're in, and you try to make it there. And then those people are like, nah, something wrong, something happened with you. No, we've heard about you. We've heard how tapped that was, right? And it affects females a lot more than it does males because at least, with males, you can always kind of connect with someone else. That's why I talk about females quite a lot. But it's like, you just don't have the time to be stupid and to be to not be corrected when you need to be corrected, because it makes a huge impact, not only for you as a female, but for the species in general. Because then it's like, what are you going to do? You're just going to be a single mom to 3 kids thinking the same way, and you're going to raise your kids the same way that you think. and you're going to find out why they're not connected to people. So they have the same ideologies as you have. And people will always pick themselves, right? It's like when someone has to, so, like, if you have to make a decision as to who to hire in a job, it's like, cool, it's not really going to affect me. I'll hire whoever. But when it comes to a spouse, it's like, no, I'm not going to settle. Like, I know my worth, and no one's going to settle for that because you have to be with this person 24/7 or however long you want to be for however many years. So no one settles. So it's like sex, right? You're like, no, I know what I like. I'm not going to do anything that I don't like. So I don't care what you like. Cool, that's great for you, but I'm not settling for that, right? So there comes a point in life where those huge decisions make a big impact in the future, and you have to be, tricky with it, and you have to kind of navigate it. Maybe if you're sensitive, take a bit of time and think about it and carve it out, but just don't push too many people away, or hope not that they don't even care to talk to you, right? Because it's like, we know, man. Like if I say to her that I don't like children, then boom, it's game over. So I'm not even going to tell her that. Or if I tell him that, you know what, men are stupid and young boys are dumb, he's going to be like, you're just another guy, and another woman in the street, and I don't care about you. And it's like, okay, well, it's not good for either of you. So, yeah.
But then what if, I feel like, what if, because as you said, sometimes you realize these things when it's a little bit too late, if not a lot. And then you find yourself in these situations. But I don't know.
Wait. Just wait. What the hell is Tom? Give me 1 second. Yeah, you here? Are you here? Okay. I'm here.
I hear you.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, okay.
I forgot what I wanted to say. But I think it was you know what, Ne? I sometimes feel that, okay, let's say now, yes, you are 50 years old, and because of some traits of yours, things never worked out, and now you didn't realize at that moment, and because of maybe you are too sensitive for people to be able to approach you on the less likable traits or characteristics of yours. But now, if no one is going to tell you, how are you going to know? Because you could even reach 70 years old and not know that is the case.
Yeah, you're down miserable.
But how come that honesty is sometimes the one thing that people try to shy away from? I know it hurts. It's not always nice to hear that you are
It's negative.
overreacting. You are dramatic. You are nang nang. You are. It's not nice. But best believe, again, the principle is that you need to acknowledge that this is something that other people don't appreciate about me, because it makes them not really feel, but it creates this image of who I am, and I do not want to be perceived as that person or experienced as that person. So why is it more convenient, I almost want to say, just because of lack of a better word, to rather, close off, leave, be done, than to speak? Because communication is the one key thing,
Well, because
and no, not to me personally, for instance, I know that my toxic traits, I'm very much aware of them. So I've come to the point of
are
accepting
you
them.
proud of them?
I'm not. I'm not, but
You gotta
that's
be
who
proud
I
about
am.
everything about you, man. Toxic or not.
It's I had to accept that that's part of me. But the moment that it is it's negatively affecting a relationship that I honor, that I adore, I'm definitely going to do something about it. Whether it is to let the person understand that it's hard for me to not be emotional. It's really hard. And I need patience in the moments that I am emotional, and understanding that that is, rather than just
Are you asking me
closing
for
off,
relationship advice?
be done. No, I'm not asking
I'm
you for,
about to
I'm
say,
just
why
saying
would you
in
think I
general.
have that?
No, 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 no. Absolutely no. In general, because now imagine you are the 70 years old, 65-year-old with 3 daughters, and you have all these toxic traits. And then you're going to be judged as well by society.
And your daughters are probably gonna have that too, or your sons. Because what do they know? They just know how you brought them up. So people don't like the truth or like to be told anything because it's anything negative. Because again, like we said yesterday, it's immediate danger. And you have to look at the things that you don't like. Why would you like that? Then you can die possibly in the future. So you'd rather not do it. But the problem with not looking at it, right, is that it's safe in the immediate future, but then it's not like it doesn't come back. So yeah, that's what drugs do, right? That's what alcohol does. That's what drugs do. That's what you do. That's what you do with them. It just cool. Let me drink today because then I can forget about today. You wake up tomorrow and oh, it's still there, and it's worse. So that's why we do it. It's a survival strategy. It's not a good one, but well, it's not a good one in the long term, but it's good in the short term. It's like fighting. It's like violence.
Mm.
Exactly the whole topic of our talk. Violence is a great tool to use. If you're irritating me, right, or someone's irritating you, you can just punch them and they feel pain. And if they feel pain, then they won't do it, right? And then you've
But
immediately solved
that's
that
the
problem.
thing. They
Yeah,
won't
but
do
then,
it, but aren't they
yeah,
going to carry on doing that to someone else?
yeah, but that's what I'm saying,
Because
exactly. So it works in the immediate future until you then get put into jail for it. And then you go, maybe I shouldn't have done that because now I've got 10 years in life and I have to be fighting for 10 years. Mhm.
some of them don't. Okay, maybe they do. Maybe they do. I wouldn't know. But that is the thing, because you've done something wrong, violence. That is the only thing you've been taught. That's the only thing you've been exposed
I mean,
to
look, even
fix
with
things.
violence, you don't have to be taught it. It's like everyone has violence in them. You don't have to be taught to hit. It's like it's a reflex.
You are, no, absolutely not. But what I'm trying to say is that in the case that's the only thing you know how to fix, because the thing is, you've done something wrong and I do not want you to do it again.
Yeah, well, that's where you come in,
I,
right? That's where you
I
come in
want
as a
to
social worker.
discontinue that behavior.
That's what,
So,
that's where we come in, or that's where we come in as social workers of life as people in general, because you're always working socially. But then that's where you come in, because then it becomes your actual job. And that's to actually try to make people understand that, look, like you said before, like taking this child out of this home might not actually be a great thing. It actually might make matters more worse. And then for me, I'm never in a situation where I have to make decisions like that. So it's not really my onus. I can choose for it to be, but for you, it actually is your job. It puts your bread on the table. So whether you like it or not, you have to make that decision. Whereas my then calling or my job is something completely different. So that's why we have the jobs that we have. And then if you don't have a job, then you can pick one, right? And then most people that pick jobs, what do? They pick the ones that are easy off. Or they wait for the people that have picked jobs to pick off them.
I wish I could just pick a job.
You
I don't
could.
know what I would have picked.
That's also another thing I was thinking about today. Like if everyone could tell their truth, do you think we're even like ready for that? Like if everyone can tell exactly what they, because part of living as well is like most of the decisions that you make is not really what you want. It's like what you think you want, right? Because it's like you realize at some point as you get older that you don't live alone. Like when you're a child, it's like it's all about you. You don't care about anything else. That's also difficult being a mother, like to someone that's going to be under 5 years old because they're never wrong, right? So like if they cry at 4 a.m. and they don't want to eat, then they don't want to eat, and then they cry after 20 minutes and then they want to eat, then they want to eat. It's like they're never wrong, and you have to be primed for that, right? Because you can't just get irritated because then the child dies, right? So you have to be a primary caregiver. So what then happens is as you get older, you then realize that you actually don't live alone. At 3 months old, or 3 years old, you realize, or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that there are other kids, and you're not supposed to shout and bite and kick. That's wrong, right? And if you skip that stage, it's like you become very antisocial. Then you get to 14, and then you realize, oh, actually, no, no, I don't live alone. I really don't live alone. And then you go to, you say varsity, or you go to work, right? And then you go, what I really like is not that I like this job. I'd actually like to just sit at home and get paid and do nothing. That's what you'd really like, right? But now that you know that you don't live alone in the world, you know that other people have things that they really like. And they would really like for you to go to work so that they can pay you. So then when I ask you what you want, you then go, well, I want the best possible salary or best possible benefits for the job that I'm going to do. So you kind of innately also put their needs together with yours because you know that you don't live alone. It's what you do with your thoughts, right? Like, because otherwise it's a purge. Because it's like, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be happy, but as long as like I'm not hurting people, it's like, okay. And then if you're a psychopath, you don't really give a shit about anything else. It's all about you. So that's part of learning.
Do you think that men have problems, issues, challenges with rejection in comparison to women? Is it harder for them to take and process and accept rejection?
I don't know. It's a yes or no question. I think for a lot of men that are hyper successful, it's not that difficult because you kind of you make rejection your best friend. For men that are not, most men are not hyper successful at all. They're terrified, which is why dating apps work perfectly because you don't get rejected. You don't know who is rejecting you, so you can just go and swipe on whoever you want, and then that's it, right? You don't get someone.
Until you have a conversation
Yeah,
with them
fair enough.
because
But I
then
mean, at least you've got that connection, and it's all up to you. But it's not like you're walking up to someone and they walk away from
okay.
you. Yeah, so it's still it's in your hands. You don't get really rejected. And part of that also is the fact that you know, more often than not in society, you as the male need to go and kind of look for the rejection. That's why females don't do it. They kind of understand that it's really hard. So I'm not going to make the first move on a man. Imagine that. That'll tear me to shreds. All I'll do is that I'll wait there for my king in shining armor to rock up, and then he can potentially be rejected. So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. It's a yes and no. I think women know that rejection is terrible, so they don't even try. And then men know that rejection is terrible, but it's like, well, I'm not gonna not live alone. So you kind of make it your best friend. I think it's different strategies for both of us.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking is that, you know, a lot of, well, what we hear is that a lot of femicide that is happening is also linked to, you know, partners or women leaving their partners, not wanting to be in the relationship anymore, for whatever reason, whether it is because of abuse that's been happening or they just decided to move on, or whatever the case might be, that they resort to, if not me, then no one is going to get you.
Yes, yes, yes. So look, first of all, even with that, I think it's a small percentage of people that even get to the point whereby they're
But
killing.
it's a problem. It
No, no,
is
no,
a
no, no. Well,
problem.
I wanna.
Why?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm trying to formulate an answer here. Um, so I think with that small minority of people, again, when you're going to react on aggression, you're either going to do it physically or non-physically, right? And physically works in the short term now, right? As I said before. And if you're stronger against a weaker person, it's going to work now. Like you don't have to be throwing out names because then that person will still be there and they'll throw names back and then it's a back and forth, right? So with things like that, when people get rejected also, is that someone won't just leave you if they also don't know that they're taking a lot from you, right? Because then it's like, I'm not going to leave you and then be in a worse off position than when I was with you. So most of these people that then get taken, they get left or get that leave other partners, leave with something, and it's often something of value that then devalues someone else, and then you get to a situation where you go, well, if I don't have the value of what I had before, what's the point of living? I really need to go get that value. And I think certain guys get to that where they go, fuck it. Like, you know what? If I'm going to go to jail, I might as well go to jail for something that I've done. And females get to that too, right? So it's not like it's different for the different sexes. I just think that whoever has the physical strength at that point in time will do whatever they need to do. Whoever has the non-physical strength at that particular time will do whatever they need to do. And then what we hear of is the people that have the physical strength, because the physical strength results in someone dying, whereas the non-physical strength really doesn't at that much. Because when you leave, you take the child and you take the finances and you strip him of everything and you make him lose his job. It's like, well, he's not dead, right? But then it's like he feels that he's dead, type of thing. And then it's like, okay, well, then what does he have left? And I think certain guys get to that, as would a female in a certain situation as well. If you're a lesbian and you're dating a lesbian, now you're both female. So if you detach everything from the other person, then what are they left with? And that's why I say every one of us has that ability to go mad. It's the same with female and male. If I'm going to take your kids away from you and take your job and take your whole existence, it's like you're going to say, well, everything that it was me is in those things that you're taking from me, is the child that I have. So without that child, what's the point of me doing certain things? But then you might say, look, I don't actually have the physical capacity to kill you, but then I can always hire someone, or I can always poison you. And you get to that.
And we've agreed that men are stronger. They have more strength than women. So then it will, whenever a guy feels that way, whether they feel they are emotionally dead, or they are devalued, whatever the case may be, then the chances for them to act in such a aggressive way is almost guaranteed. And
Yeah,
then it's guaranteed that you might die as the lady because you don't have the strength to fight this person.
yeah, and he's also acting out of violence. But also, like, I mean, look, even with that sentence there that you're saying, it's like, yes, in a situation whereby the other person is a female, because in a gay relationship, for example, you're both male, right? So the person that has more strength than the other person is then going to be the one that has the upper hand, because they're both stronger. So when you're now in a situation where it's a male and a female, it's almost always going to be the male that has more strength, who has the upper hand. That's why it's a domestic case. It's not a gender case. It's just a couple or in a relationship or a marriage. So that's why it happens that way. So yeah, it's and not to say, look, there are crazy people out there. There's guys that just fight with everyone and are extremely aggressive, and they don't even need to be rejected, and they're just out and about, just just waiting to be raging, right? But that's a whole different story. That's a whole different everything. It's not the narrative that is actually what the actual narrative is. It's what is trying to be pushed. Because as you know, as a social worker, man, like exactly what you said, more often than not, there are more sides to a story, right? And it's very easy to be triggered by, oh, okay, well, he hit her or she hit him, until you delve deeper and you go, shit, okay, well, yeah, that's pretty, yeah. It's not like it's justified, but it's like if
Mm.
anyone were to do something like that, it's like that's quite close. So
Yes, and it's hard sometimes, to
accept it.
kind of be, because you don't want to justify, you don't want to condone or agree with what has happened.
Yeah.
But if you are humanly looking at it, you would see sometimes that, oh, okay, that was really a reaction
Yeah.
um of anger at the moment or in the moment,
Yeah.
and it was either triggered or provoked, but not excusing the act, because
Yeah. But
as I
look,
said, violence should not be the first thing, the first problem solver of things. It should not be.
yeah.
But again, we need to unlearn, unlearn certain things that has been accepted as ndakhuliswa kanje.
Mm.
My mother wakhuliswa the same way. It's tradition.
And the only
Look
way to
at
unlearn it, the
A,
one
B,
way.
and C. I've turned out okay.
Mm.
I was beaten up and I turned out okay.
Mm.
And we need to acknowledge and really realize that, but it's not 19th tech anymore. We
Mm.
are in another era. Society has changed, people values have changed, and now also it has changed so much that in the same household people can have different norms.
Mm. Mm.
And unlike back in the day where we are all Christian and you are raised like this, now you can get a household, you can get a family where one is like that and one is like that, and that is fine. But the
Mm.
moment that you are going to enforce your views, your experiences on someone else, it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
Because now you need to unlearn that fixing things, or you've done something wrong, so bad, because it's painful. And we always get, as social workers, we always get the backlash of it's always funny because if I speak to uh someone who is a parent who could have been my grandmother, or my mother, a parent of mine, then
They challenge you personally.
the first thing they would ask, Nomdan,
Zangu bethu.
I'm like, no, I don't have. I'm done. I don't have my own children. Like, so why would you come into my house and tell me how I must discipline my children? But I cannot in that moment be judgmental because that is what they are familiar with.
And that's
That
a
is
good
their
question. Because it
reality.
stumps you, right? Like as soon as she asks, you go, yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Why do I feel like I have that power?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you would
It
ask the
is
same thing.
challenging.
Like if your mom would be if your mom were to ask someone, a social worker, that, and you were there, you'd also ask, yeah, why would you think you can come here and tell my mother what to do?
Mhm.
Unless you were getting hit.
Most people.
Unless you were getting hit. Then you go, yeah. Ask her, why is she hitting me?
No, it's true, but now you need to understand where they come and going back to what we said earlier, you need to be open minded. I can't be say, yeah, but Makulu, we are nang now or moms nang. I cannot. I need to understand, and now I need to make them aware that we are not doing things like that anymore. And if when you are not going to take what I'm telling you now seriously, you're going to get into big trouble. Unfortunately, because the next time you beat this child up, I go to hospital for medical assessment. The doctor gives me a J88. I go and open a case. Regardless of how old you are, you're going to go to Polsmo. That is the reality. You understand? But I cannot go there and be like, here the police, you going, nang, 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 nang. Because there is a reason why I always believe that there is account. No one is just born evil. Well, that is my personal opinion. But life happens to people. And I think that is
Everyone's
also
born
one of
evil.
the reasons why we are social workers, because we're trying to prevent certain behaviors that manifest later in people's lives when they are adults. Because whatever traumas they experience as children might not surface in the first 20 years of their lives, but later on, it's gonna something. And if you look at most of your psychopaths and all of that, or Ted Bundy who's actually a qualified social worker, but something went wrong somewhere in the lives earlier, and it was never addressed. It was never, and then now you need to live. You need to live, and regardless of what life has, gave you, if the first thing for you is someone do me wrong, violence is the solution. That's it, because when and now you're trying to survive the whole safety thing.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest at that moment.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard sometimes to make people understand that this 8-year-old that you are now emotionally abusing, that you are breaking off, you're telling them they damn, that speaks somewhere.
Yeah.
And if I remember well, someone said emotional intelligence is not a thing, but we're not gonna go into that now. There's a conversation for another day. But that sticks somewhere, and it might not surface now. That child can be the greatest doctor somewhere, but that child might have problems in their relationships. You might be emotionally dependent, codependent, or you might be totally cut off. No emotional intelligence whatsoever. You're just not born that way. Something happened somewhere. And we're not saying that everyone is super broken and you must go see psychologists. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying that you need to be able to at least, get to a point where you realize that certain behaviors are harmful and they result in the continuation of other things that are wrong. there's no way that we can fight all these social evils, Jay, just because we need to start somewhere. Hence, we have social workers so that those kids should not become the adults that we are struggling with now. But it's hard.
Well, would you rather have it easy?
Really hard. Huh?
Would you rather have it easy?
Sometimes.
But if you had it easy, would you
But I
do it?
know human beings are very complicated. We are complex beings.
If it was easy, would you do it? If it was easy, would you do it?
Hi, Mara, sometimes these challenges are too much.
Yeah, fair enough. I understand that, but it's like that's also the paradox that we have all the time, right? Is that we always complain about hard stuff, then when people make it easy, we go, "Nah, you're not challenging me." So it's like the constant battle of trying to be better than who you were, but you need to have a
But
certain.
that shows how complex we are.
Hmm. Yeah, it does. And every day you just wake up and you keep going. It's like, well, my dad abused me, or my mom did this, and my dad's like that. And I don't like the way my mom is, and it's like, okay, well, what if you didn't have both of them? Would that be better for you? It's like,
Sure.
and then you go, okay, you know what? Maybe let me be grateful for life, and then let me stick around and try to make it better for me and better for everyone else. Because maybe the shit that I'm complaining about, the alternative is worse, and it probably always is. And it's tough to think about
Yeah.
that, especially when you've gone through hardships, right? It's like the things that you go through that are difficult is always the most difficult things that you've gone through until you go through something difficult the next time. So,
And it also brings up the conversation of you are more privileged than the other person because they have it worse. So
yeah.
when you should be grateful that at least, which I personally hate for my own reasons, because just because now my struggles are different than yours, just because I had parents who can shower me with money when I actually need them to be emotionally present. And when on the other side you have parents
Or didn't have.
that anything, you know,
That's why.
it doesn't mean that my experience is better than yours, because for me personally, that is it hurt me. That is my experience. The same, like, some people, I've obviously been on missionaries and stuff like that, and I remember this one time,
I've never been.
thank you for telling me. But I remember this one time we went on outreach, some soup kitchen somewhere, and this white lady stopped the car because there were dogs, but they looked terrible. And she started crying, and she called SPCA, and she want to rescue these dogs, the whole thing. And eventually, later the day, when we were going back to where we were staying, she said she's sorry to say this, but she cares about animals more than people. I was like, how dare you?
Was it important to mention her race?
Huh?
Was it important to mention her race?
Sorry, I don't know. I just had to say it because I think the reason why I said it is because what we are exposed to is that, oh, okay, how come they would donate money to save sea life? And however, they can't even. White people. White people, it's true. However, Africa Licha, we need A, B, and C, and they were not coming to the party. You understand? So then, and that's most of the times we hear these conversations, whether you are part of it or you just by the passing or people that you know, and then sometimes it puts you in a position where you have to be like, okay, but I also have friends who
So,
care about animals more than human beings, and then obviously the race thing is gonna come out.
so
It will
yeah.
always come out, whether you can try or say whatever, it will come out.
Yeah.
And
So
even
what if, so what if
if
those
I did not mention the race, someone else would be like, ah, it's probably a white person.
Okay,
It's
so then
only the race.
what if someone says, well, the reason that those particular white people are not supporting people from Ekairicha and they're supporting wild animals is because it's their money and they can do whatever they want with it, just like the black people in Ekairicha, all they want to do with it is get drunk with it.
They are going to be
Is that like would that be
crucified.
racist? Would that be racist?
No, because
Really?
I feel like at
It's
the
like
end of the day,
there's
it's
prejudices
my
in everything that we
personal
do, right?
choice. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah,
Gayam, it's mine.
yeah. So then what's wrong with her caring about dogs instead of humans?
Because at that moment you feel like, how the true, how can, and then immediately you go into, okay, maybe it's privilege speaking that maybe they've been exposed to. Tina is Zinja for me. Ekaya, we didn't even have dogs because my mom believed that we behave like dogs sometimes. But it would be, the how what I've been exposed to is different from what I've been exposed or early in my life is different from what I've been exposed to later in my life. So as I said earlier, everything you go through or everything you are exposed to, it
Hmm.
shapes your thinking and how you perceive things. So later on, you're like, why do they? I'm not used to people caring about animals that much. If we had to choose between giving to Indayolala and a dog,
It's also
duh.
another thing. It's also another thing that when you mention about these things that we have to unlearn as well. It's like when you as a black person refer to white people as they or them or those. It's like it's fine. It's like we're speaking together. It's another black person you're speaking to. But then you'll pop a video up on Facebook, and then someone or white person will say to a group of black people or one black person, "Why do you people?" And all of a sudden it's a trigger, and it's like, hmm, you have to kind of get that right somewhere. There's a bit of inequality there, isn't there? So that's another topic for another
Someone
day.
actually said that. I can't remember what the context was. On Twitter, but then
Mm.
someone said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Why is it
It's the same.
okay?
Yeah, it's the same as like
But then,
it's almost like white people have then have all have to sit there and take all the bully because of whatever white people did back in the day because they were white people. It's like, well, that doesn't make it fair. Doesn't make just because now if I hate the ideology that you did to me, when I do exactly the same thing to you, then I'm doing the exact same thing that you did. So then how I'm not actually hating the ideology. I hate the fact that I did it more
mm,
than you did it.
mm, mm. But I think yes, obviously a lot of things has to be unlearned and relearned and all of that. But maybe I do not know. Maybe because sometimes it sounds as if it's almost like when
Another thing,
when you've done wrong to a friend or whoever, and you just I'm sorry, and life has to move on, and then but you can see there's some animosity happening, and you can't really put your finger on it of what is really happening. Some people prefer to actually, instead of
Do you
I'm
then?
sorry, and life moves on,
Yes.
to actually
Do you
listen,
then?
Bana, what is it
Yeah.
that you've done that
Yeah.
made me feel the way that I am feeling?
Yes.
In
So
order for
then,
me,
do you then say that then all friends are terrible? You don't, right? You pick on that person. You say that person did something shitty, and then they should be whatever. I'm not going to talk to them anymore. So now it's like if you go on against a colored person or a white person or a Hispanic person, it's like, what do they do to you? Maybe their great grandfather did some shit, but they did nothing. So why do you call them as they? Why do you collectively then do that to them? Because then those people can turn around and say, well, you know what? I got robbed the other day by a black person. So they, and it's like, cool. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? So
same thing as men not wanting to be labeled as all men are trash.
fair enough.
Because
Yeah.
I know it's not all of us.
Yeah, well, that's the thing because the thing is again, it's like well, as soon as you label everyone according to everything that one person did, then they're liable to do that to you. So it's like if someone goes and falsely accuses a guy of rape, then they're gonna go cool. All women are trash. That doesn't get us anywhere. You
Mm.
can't you can't name the collective based on particular individuals in that collective. And you can't say, oh, well, no, you know that I don't mean that. It's like, no, I don't, unless you say it. I can't think what you want to say.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day
But
as
then,
well, yeah, sorry.
no, continue.
No, go for it. Enjoy listening.
Oh, I was gonna ask, don't you think it is somewhat different? Because
No, I don't.
when listen, when you look at when you, as I said earlier, there shouldn't be no levels to pain and hurt and discomfort and whatever that someone is or experiencing. So don't you think that because of, and I know this is going to sound contradictory, but because of the severity that Black people went through and is still in some instances and spaces and all of that, experiencing, and also the product of the pain and the suffering is still very much on surface at this current day, that you know some things are still used in a way that
Which black
I don't know.
people and
I
where
don't know if I'm
and when
saying.
and how?
Yes, but I
Yeah.
think like because it's still there, and
And
unfortunately,
even then, for example,
generations later, so many generations later, and the products of that pain of suffering, um, of our ancestors is still very much evident that
okay.
now
So
people,
the things like
it's
the
hard
first,
for people to kind of like move on. So
yeah,
then it's easy to still refer to white people as they. It's still easier to
doesn't make you less racist.
react a certain way towards them.
Doesn't make you less racist. You know
Doesn't
what I
make
think?
you less of a racist.
No, because it's like well then how are we gonna rectify that? We're gonna make quota systems and make black people that are undeserving then benefit from or benefit at the expense of white people that have done nothing. Then you're just doing exactly what you're crying out against. It's the same thing with gender things. It's like, well, we're gonna put women in power because black people, because men have been in a position of power for their whole lives. Well, then what about the people that are not in power
We
then?
can try it out. We can try it out and see how
Well,
it
we
would work
have tried
out.
it out. That's what the
And then
racism wars were. We've tried it out and it doesn't work. But now you
I
want
was
to, the
speaking
only
to
reason you want to
survive,
try it
but I
out,
hear you.
that's the thing. That's where the divide comes in. The people that want to try it out are the people that will benefit from it. The people that don't want to try it out are the people that don't want to benefit. It's like if you're a Nazi, you don't want to try out some discrimination because you're not going to be put in a gas chamber.
Hmm.
Yeah, until they say, okay, cool. Well, after 10 years, then we're going to swap. Then you go, oh,
Yes, but
well,
it shouldn't be a tit for tat.
that's what
It
I'm
should be
saying.
an
Well,
eye for
that's
an
the
eye.
thing. That's why people are like Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi are so insanely just out of this world because they just never retaliate to things like that. It's like I'm hurt. Okay, I understand that I'm hurt. How can we fix this for all of us? Because if I try to fix it just for me, you will then get to a point where you're also going to fix it just for you, and then it's just back and forth. It's not that I'm excusing you for what you did to me. I know what you did, but it's not going to help the future me. It's like hitting someone, like we said. It's like you hit me, okay, now I'm mad. I'm gonna hit you back. Okay, but that means in the future that you are gonna come and eliminate all my kids and everyone that's gonna be part of my family because you know that if you don't do it first, I'll do it. And then it just everything dissolves into chaos.
How did we get to this conversation? But I wanted to say something now. Don't you think? Well, okay. We don't do things the same way. But I'm just thinking that what would it take if maybe in social work we have this thing where we sometimes feel that the client
Yeah.
is the expert in their own issues or whatever.
Yes, I believe that
Um,
is very true. It's the one thing I like about
um,
social work.
I didn't ask you, but okay. Um, what what would maybe to listen to the black population of in terms of what do they want to happen? What do they want except for being in power? Because obviously that it is an entire disaster. It is not working out. But do you think that
Well, that
regardless of I think for many, decades now we've seen that let's for instance, Eastern Cape is just it's bad. The government
yeah.
there,
So look,
ANC, it's bad.
that's exactly
And
what
then
we're
you look
talking
at the
about, right?
Western Cape, and everyone from the Eastern Cape is coming from the Western Cape, and the Western Cape
So
is DA.
that's why
So,
that's how we got into this debate, this conversation, is because that's exactly the same knee-jerk reaction that we've been using with emotions, and we don't logically think about things. It's exactly that. It's the whole, well, I feel as though this has happened, so therefore, in order for it to stop happening, this should happen. And it's like, okay, did you think about it? No, I didn't. Okay, well then see what happens in 5 years or in 10 years. It's actually worse because you don't critically think about it because you go into to it emotionally. And then what happens? Then you run away from the place that you created for yourself that you thought was safety. You built a
mm,
house for yourself, put everyone else in there, and then it's when it started to crack and dissolve, you go, oh shit, this is actually not safe. Let me go back to the house that I thought was bad because it's better than this house. And then you leave those people that are there because they don't know any better and they crumble. That's like what? That's the whole story of politics and history. So okay, cool. I'll do what I want now. Leave everyone else to crumble. I'll jump ship. That's everywhere in the world. So that's the problem is when you think emotionally. Yeah, and then look, the world comes with, hey.
Fear, leave us emotional thinkers, please.
No, I think if there weren't any emotional thinkers, there wouldn't be any logical thinkers, right? I'm only pointing out the problems with it because I'm only doing that. It's not like I don't acknowledge that there are amazing things with it, right? The whole point of even thinking logically is because you have an emotion that's based in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't think about it. So you have to have the contrast, and then you have to get them to meet somewhere. And perhaps getting it wrong is one step to getting it right. But then obviously people are going to think, well, how much wrong do you want to get it before you change your mind and get it right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So at least,
Absolutely.
yeah. And the way to do that is to kind of converse and see, oh shit, actually, maybe when I was talking about black people wanting this, well, maybe, nah, it's not the best thing for everyone because also we live with colored people and we live with Chinese people and we live with Asians and It's like, what do we actually want as people? What do you want? Because maybe what I want is going to be completely different to what you want. And maybe what I want is actually
Exactly.
detrimental to what you want. Right?
Exactly. But
Yeah.
also, you can't, there is absolutely no way that it's possible
To please everyone.
actually to please everyone, to give everyone what they want.
Yeah,
That is
that's
absolutely
why
not a
that's
design.
why when you look at stats, it's very important to go, well, the ones that are the minority, will they make an actual change? Should they be listened to? How much should they be listened to? Because then does that take away from the things that we need to move forward? And that's a constant shift all the time. Because as you said also before with the whole grandmother story, it's like at certain times there's certain people that just do not listen. And certain times they listen through violence, right? And then there's certain times where like actually violence is detrimental. So you don't want to throw everything out and then only take the one thing because then you don't have any other thing to base it on. So you have to listen, you have to dialogue, right? It's the same with religious books. It's like, well, you're gonna throw away the religious book and then what are you gonna replace them with? Nothing. You have to have free thinkers and you have to have people that are going to be boxed and they'll continuously have to be having conversations in order to go, okay, now we're a bit too boxed. We need to open things up. Okay, now we're a bit too open. We need to close things down. So it's like you need to have believers and need to have people that don't believe because it's like, well, if we believe too much, then we go into chaos. If we don't believe anything, then it's just as revolting. So too much of a good thing is bad, and too much of a bad thing is also bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe we can have a
Absolutely.
race talk the next time, and then we can delve into that.
I'm so grateful for inviting me the 2 evenings. It's been great, but this is it from me.
No, no, no. I'm saying, not tonight. Tonight I'm also done. It's quite a lot.
I'm
But, yeah,
done. I have to finish a baby shower thing for this weekend. So
yeah. No, don't worry. We'll talk soon then. If we need to attend
yeah.
this course, someone, but yeah, I haven't spoken this class in such a long time. So
You
yeah.
are kaloge some see yo.
Now I'm
We can do
got that kind of
Afrikaans
stuff.
by
Okay.
all means.
Afrikaans, we
Ek
can mix it,
sal
yeah.
so diep ek sal so diep gaan so wat jy wil. Geen
That's
glad
actually
nie om
perfect.
nie.
Maybe we should try that next time. You can have it in Afrikaans. I
But
can hear it a bit. Then you bitching is
ah.
clever. We can do it like that. It's cool. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys.
All
Have
right.
a
Good
great
night.
evening.
See you.
Bye.